Oh, look at them. They're so adorable. Who'd ever want to harm these little things? They were the bad guys. So I just recently watched Blazion's video about Echo... of his critique of the Echo gear system in Wuthering Waves, and it's got me thinking about a common complaint in regards to the perceived lack of EXP materials for leveling Echoes. Today, I wanted to quickly go over the situation, and while I feel people are missing an important factor or set of factors in this discussion that creates this debate in the first place. The debate, for the most part, is pretty cut and dry. One side believes that there is a constant shortage of Echo EXP, with the only means of consistently acquiring more is through the Tacet Fields. However, the Tacet Fields themselves are heavily criticized for bloating the inventories of more dedicated players with a bunch of worthless Echoes all the time, and being one of the most stamina costly activities in the game, right beside boss challenges, an activity with a hard cap of attempts per week that offer incredibly valuable materials for character skill progression. Something much more valuable, one could argue, than a measly small amount of tubes from the Tacet Fields. The other side of the conversation says there is currently no issue with Echo EXP, and the problem exists primarily from players not being able to properly allocate and budget their resources properly to not go dry so frequently on EXP material. Players are constantly and immediately accused of hyper-investing in an Echo all the way to level 25. Resulting in said EXP drought, as the return rate for Echo EXP gets more and more costly as you continue to invest in them. Just as a quick aside, the refund rate of Echo EXP is 75% in Wuthering Waves. Comparatively, Genshin Impact, Honkai Star Rail, and Zenless Zone Zero all have a refund rate of 80%. A 5% difference may not seem like a lot at first, but when you are constantly leveling and trashing gear, it's not something you can just easily ignore. Leveling an Echo to 25 will take a total of 28 premium seal tubes, the most expensive of the available EXP materials, while leveling it to only 15 will only take 8. Respectively, this gives players the opportunity to roll for 5 substats with a 25 Echo and 3 substats with a 15 Echo. The idea is to get a feel for if the Echo is worth the hyper investment by incrementally leveling every 5 levels and taking into consideration the substat rolls as you go. Trash the Echo early if the rolls are not in your favor to preserve as much tubes as you can, or go all in if the first initial rolls make you want to commit to the piece, even if the remaining rolls don't go in your favor. So those are the two sides of this matter. Despite the back and forth that has been going on for a while now, I don't think I've ever seen the conversation go beyond the thought process of just giving more EXP to players. In my personal opinion, the problems with Echo leveling EXP is a symptom of a much larger combination of problems that create this situation we are at. A symptom, not the disease, if I may suggest. So allow me to dig deeper into why people are put in this situation of an EXP shortage all the time. Before I start listing these problems with Echo leveling, I need to, of course, acknowledge that it is a huge positive for Wuthering Waves that you can actively farm main stats of gear without having to spend stamina. No doubt, in the other well-known gacha games, players can be held back and may have already been held back before by not getting the main stats they need to even begin their rolling process. However, much like what I've said in the past in regards to free weekly gear attempts in Honkai Star Rail and Zenless Zone Zero, if you don't have a minimum guarantee for gear grinding, then simply offering more opportunities to farm is not the massive game changer you think it is. And in Wuthering Waves' case, it's important to remember that said stamina-free gear farming is only as valuable as the player is willing to invest time into grinding for it. If someone does not have the time to dedicate to running Echo routes, then they will not see the benefits of this improvement, and will be finding themselves farming for Tacet Fields for gear pieces anyway. There is of course the modifier item as well that was recently introduced, but these come in short supply, and depending on the player's personal stock of coral, is not worth the asking price in the first place. The first massive issue we see with Wuthering Waves Echo leveling is that the number of possible substats that can be rolled is the highest of all the big four gacha games. Genshin Impact has 10 possible substats you can roll for, Honkai Star Rail has 12, Zenless Zone Zero is the same with Genshin and has 10, and Wuthering Waves has 13 total substats that can be rolled on an Echo. While it's easy to just tell people to simply roll for a few substats and stop, it's important to remember that a level 15 Echo has to roll for a 1 in 13, a 1 in 12, and a 1 in 11 for substats that might appeal to their character's build. Not only do the other 3 gachas have a lower total substat possibilities, but the highest rarity of all their respective gear will already have a minimum of 3 of the 4 substats already on the piece at a base. If a piece has 3 substats on it, then they only need to level it just a little bit to roll for a 1 in 7 in Genshin or ZZZ, or a 1 in 9 in Star Rail. And if it comes out with all 4 substats, then you've already figured out if it's useful without putting anything in it. This leads me to the second issue in regards to EXP. Echoes need to be leveled up to reveal the substats. While yes, Wuthering Waves stat values are the highest of any of the other games and are only rolled once, WuWa's stat roll range, however, is so incredibly wide when compared to the other games. Let's use crit rate for an example. Assuming the lowest possible roll for a WuWa Echo with crit rate, and rolling the lowest possible substat value of crit rate at least twice on gear in a Hoyoverse game, you are looking at a difference of roughly 14% in Genshin, 19% in Star Rail, and 24% in ZZZ. Though keep in mind with ZZZ in particular that every single attack agent will receive an additional 14.4% crit rate from a level 7 core passive. Every single attack agent. Unlike Genshin or Star Rail, where it will vary depending on the DPS in question. All this is on top of the fact that if a player is building crit rate for a character, they would ideally use a gear piece that already has crit rate on it at level 0. So that already gives them one of the 2 crit substat rolls needed for this hypothetical. With all this to consider, it would be no wonder why players are constantly complaining about Echo EXP, as a level 0 Echo in WuWa puts players at a massive disadvantage in terms of working with what information they have when compared to Genshin, HSR, and ZZZ. Even if you gradually level Echoes and pull out early, you are still using XP, just at a slower rate, but you are nonetheless still putting far more EXP in than you would in the other games, and in return, you are given less information to make an educated decision on what piece to keep and what to trash, all the while you are also having a 5% lower EXP return rate when you consume leveled Echoes compared to Genshin, Star Rail, and ZZZ. The last thing I want to talk about is the existence of the energy regen stat in Wuthering Waves' Echoes. On top of needing crit substats, attack percent, and whatever damage bonus type you'll need from substat rolls for your DPSs, a majority of characters will also want some energy regen as well for smoother rotation gameplay. Failure to meet energy regen requirements for characters will have a direct negative effect on a player's experience, as this is supposed to be a fast-paced action game, yet energy regen plays way too much of a role in said pacing. Excluding Honkai Star Rail, as it is a turn-based game, and game feel is going to be drastically different when compared to a real-time action game, both Genshin Impact and Zenless Zone Zero is not shackled in this same regard. Genshin allows you to compensate for a lack of energy recharge by running a character with good particle generation, acting as the battery for your team's rotations. As for ZZZ, energy regen is contained within the main stat of Drive Disc 6, and that is it. You cannot get any more than that from gear alone, and going further than that, ZZZ's energy regen stat is only really valuable on support characters, and maybe a few other non-DPS characters. Otherwise, that is it. Comparatively, Wuthering Waves' energy regen stat has a lot more characters who would want to get something out of it. So what are you WuWa players gonna do? Use Yang Yang's outro skill to compensate? Oh please, most of you probably didn't even know she gives her team energy back on her outro skill. I am of the opinion that it is these very foundational issues with Echo leveling as a whole that are the disease of the issue that creates the symptom of an Echo EXP scarcity. And quite frankly, I'm surprised seemingly no one has ever dug into how the scarcity happens in the first place. Yes, having bad RNG will always be a factor, but there can always be other compounding issues that make things worse. And I believe the aforementioned shortcomings mentioned above are what have led to this situation in the first place. And with that, I have said all I really wanted to about the Echo EXP shortage debate in Wuthering Waves. When I first returned at the tail end of version 2.2, I will admit I was hyper investing in Echoes for a little bit until I remembered how much I should have been investing later down the line. However, as I was trying to more carefully ration out EXP, I was getting frustrated with having to throw away pieces because the cost of just seeing what gets rolled was just too much for me to spend on for my account. Yet despite restraining myself to only leveling to 15, I still often found myself running short on EXP. The only reason I never cared about it much this whole time was because I was actively choosing not to participate in WuWa's endgame content, and therefore was not feeling the shortcomings of my account's Echo investment. To those of you still asking for a domain exclusive for Echo EXP, I have a newsflash for you. If Kuro Games have to this very day not added an Echo EXP domain, then it should be obvious they don't intend to. For all intents and purposes, the Tacet Fields are the EXP domains, as being able to farm Echoes in the overworld make any Echoes earned in Tacet Fields effectively worthless. And tuners aren't a problem unless you are enhancing Echoes at a rate faster than what can be given through Tacet Fields, permanent content, and event content. If we ever do see a dedicated Echo EXP domain, I wouldn't anticipate it coming until another game version or two. Or as some knee-jerk reaction, should Kuro suddenly do something that turns their reputation upside down. But until then, this has been Arikado Zodan, and I'm clocking out.